Welcome to the Modern Mythos Podcast, a show dedicated to Call of Cthulhu and other investigative horror games. I'm John Hook.
And I'm Seth Skwerkowski, and together we'll discuss writing, game mastering, and player tips and how you can apply them to your table. Today's episode, we'll be discussing the concepts of milestone leveling and PC death in Call of Cthulhu.
Milestone Leveling. Seth, this is something that I actually had no idea about, and I learned about it fairly recently. Do you know what it means when you hear the term milestone leveling?
As a fellow old gamer, I've only become aware of this in the past year, maybe 9 months. So give it to me, just because this is something I had to look up because people talked about it. I didn't know. So, but maybe our audience doesn't. So what is it?
I learned about this recently. Milestone leveling, I guess, came up with Dungeons and Dragons and characters who level, first level, second level. And instead of collecting experience points and your individual character leveling up when they've hit a certain threshold of experience points, milestone leveling, or the concept of it, is the game master and the players, they play the game, and then when a certain milestone or achievement of the campaign of the sandbox world of whatever it is that you're playing, when you've made that achievement, everybody just levels up, and so now you just kind of go, oh, we are now progressing all to second level or now to third level. And I thought, what a kind of a cool concept, and how could something like this apply to Call of Cthulhu? So I kind of thought about this, and I actually kind of like the idea. So what is leveling up in Call of Cthulhu? Let's get an understanding of that first, and then how could milestone leveling apply to that? In Call of Cthulhu, which is a skill-based system, it is not a level-based system. You play, the character sheet has little tick marks so that as you use your skills successfully, you can tick that skill. For myself, because I do use the optional luck system where you can spend luck points to be successful in skills, I actually don't allow my players to tick their skills if they had to use luck for that skill. So I make it.
I don't consider luck an option. It is. We have luck.
Yes.
Finding out somebody doesn't use luck is weird to me.
I find it weird that it's written as an optional rule in the game, because I've never run across anyone who's playing 7th edition rules and don't utilize the luck rule. So it just is as far as I'm concerned, it just is the rule. But I don't do the skill tick if it had to be luck spend to do it. For me, that's where I do try and stay a purist. You have to actually roll equal to or less than that percentage value for that skill point to be ticked. And then the concept being is that whenever you've reached a certain milestone in your scenario or in the campaign, typically it's the conclusion of that mystery, your players are able to roll their ticks, as we kind of use the lingo for Call of Cthulhu. Roll your ticks for your skills, and anything that had a tick mark, you'll roll your percentage dice. Now you're trying to do the inverse. You're trying to roll above your stated skill percentage. And if you can do that, you can get to add 1d10 to that individual skill. But you can always run into that issue where I rolled equal to or less than again, and so nothing gets added to that particular rules as written. Nothing gets added to that skill. So then I asked myself, well, what would milestone leveling be like? So for me, and I think I might utilize this, I'll talk to my players ahead of time and get them all on board. And if everyone is interested in doing it, this is how I would implement milestone leveling in Call of Cthulhu. Continue to play the game as normal. Continue to tick the skills, if they are used successfully, as normal. And then when we get to a milestone, which could be the end of that mystery or the end of a chapter if it's part of a longer running campaign. The milestone success then would be 60. We'll say 60 skill points. 60 skill points that now the player, can disperse amongst their skills. And I would say for skills that got the check, you can disperse up to 10 points on those. And any skills that did not get a check, you could disperse up to, we'll say, 3 points on those. And that gives the player some room to disperse. And maybe 60 is too much, but you come up with a number that would be equitable, and fair for all players, and that becomes what you can disperse. Sort of like how when you're doing character creation, you have your intelligence. For 7th edition, it's intelligence times 2. Those are your secondary skill points, and you can disperse amongst all of your skills. Kind of treating it like that, your milestone leveling, it could be maybe 40, 50, or 60 points and disperse them. And skills that had a tick mark, give them up to 10 if you so desire. Skills without a tick mark, keep it lower, maybe 3, maybe as much as 5. But that's how I think you could bring a milestone leveling to Call of Cthulhu.
Well, milestone for me, if and doing it's like Dungeons and Dragons. So I hail from the elder days back when levels didn't even have the same XPs as each other. That was like the double edge of the monk was monks were awesome except for like their XP requirements were like twice what everyone else's were. So the whole group is like 6th level and the monk is still 3rd level, and it just sucked. Druid, by the way, was the secret class in that one. They had half the XP requirements as everybody else, so your Druid launched up very, very quickly. And then the newer editions, they made it to where it was always at the same XP requirements for them to level up. Had I known about something like that back when we were playing like 5th edition D&D and whatnot, I would have absolutely used that, because I've had campaigns to where I needed them to advance at a certain progression, or I did have cases where one character is kind of moving up leaps and bounds faster than another, and I kind of want to keep them a little bit more even with each other. That way you don't have to keep having situations where you're trying to challenge the tougher character, which means you're just creaming the weaker one constantly. So I can see the appeal. I think that's great. Like, you've completed the adventure and you are all now 5th level, and now we'll get rid of all of our new skills and all of our level achievement stuff all at once, versus periodically so and so has to do it, and then we have to stop and to let Bill improve his character, and then we can keep going. It's like, nope, we all do this at once, then we do the next game. I could see a definite reason why I would do that, at least in some campaigns. I wouldn't do that in every one of them, but I like that. However, for Call of Cthulhu, I'm not sold on it. One of the reasons that I like skill-based systems, and one of the reasons I love Call of Cthulhu and how they handle it, is you've got the check marks that you go through, and I always find that encourages players to attempt skill rolls. If they know they can only improve in a skill if they use that skill successfully, they are more inclined to try to use their skills, versus kind of sitting back and letting somebody else do it. You've got that one player, it's just kind of like not fully engaging, and then you've got that one that's fully engaged. And at the end of the day, I don't want to actually give them the same XPs as one another, just because I don't want the one that's kind of sitting there and writing out the group project to be rewarded equally as the person that took the lead on the group project. So I like the idea that at the end, they check they do all their skill ones, and it just seems to be pretty much the thing. The person that did all the was enthusiastic and tried to make as many skill rolls as possible goes up more than the one that didn't do any. So that's been one of the big appeals that I've had toward systems that use that sort of mechanic, is the subtle way of encouraging them to use as many skills as possible without me just sitting there behind the screen going, "Come on, Bill, come on, get in the game, man." Yeah, like they know this is the only way they can improve. So I like that. Now, if you're going to do it to where you could only award points on a skill that was used, okay, that does help. And if it wasn't used, either you double costs or something, where it's like you can put up to 5 points, but each point costs you 2 points, sort of deal, out of your pool of 50 or 60 points to distribute. I could see that. And by the way, I have never heard the term "roll your ticks" before. I'm going to steal
What?
it, but
Oh, steal that. I've always heard that.
I've never heard "roll your ticks," like, just so it's not in my vernacular. But well, it is now. But and if with the way you're doing it, do they still roll skill improvements and then they get a pool?
With the concept of milestone leveling, I would not, and I will caveat in saying I've only recently learned about this concept of milestone leveling, so I'm still mentally considering using it, but to date I've never implemented this at the table. So I would think there would not be skill rolls if I was going to implement milestone leveling. My experience with players who have been improving their characters, and I will say my experience is rather limited because the vast majority of games that I've run have been these one shots, either convention scenarios or just single scenarios where we design characters or grab pre-gens just to play that scenario, with never the thought of these are characters that we're going to use again and take forward. And so really, when you go into a game with that kind of mindset, character death is something that you are, as a player, usually pretty welcome to, because you weren't going to improve him anyways. And then those who survived, we just laughed and went, "Hey, he survived," and never improved him. But on the
Sometimes
ones
we've
that
done
are,
improvements afterwards just for yucks. Like, let's see how they did, and like,
yeah,
but we
we
never
could
played
for
them
that.
again. Yeah, but it's just like, we're just, we'll do improvement on this one shot character just to see how the hell the rest of their life went after that. Of like, well, then at the end of the day, their listen went up, and
Yeah,
then they're
right.
right off of the sunset.
And it's funny because I'm running a campaign right now for a group on the YouTube channel Into the Darkness. I'm running the Spawn of Azathoth campaign. And the players have been improving their characters as we conclude each chapter of that campaign. And we are having instances, this is happening for me currently, where a player who throughout the course of a chapter, I don't know, 8 or 10 skills were used successfully. And then when it came time for improvement, one skill was improved for 2 skill points. And I can tell you, the player was really dejected at, God, I did all this and my reward was squat. As far as the skill, I mean, there were sanity rewards. Their sanity, pumped up, because that's fairly typical for a mystery or chapter conclusion in Call of Cthulhu. Is you have your sanity rewards. We're getting our mental stability back, but as far as skill improvement, this player was just like, I mean, he was dejected. He was like, "Ugh, I just got 2 points. That's all I got." And then there are other players who are like, this went up by 3. This went up by 5. I got this one that went up by 7. This one also went up by 5. And I'm like, well, that guy, he's really kind of, reaping rewards for playing. And this other guy didn't. Whereas maybe a concept of milestone leveling might kind of level out the playing field as far as that kind of thing is concerned.
I okay, so I've also had that too, where you've got that, yeah, that one person, they're deeply engaged at the game. They're every opportunity they can to make a roll, they do it, they succeed, and they're badasses, and they love it. And then improvement comes along, and lo and behold, they don't really improve that much, if at all. And it bums me out. And actually, the time it bums me out the most is when a the game was significantly altered by a badass skill roll, such as we had one where it was accounting. Accounting would have saved the day. You start off with like a 5% accounting, right? It's so bad, and nobody in the party had put any points in accounting, so they all had five. And the detective character picked it up. He's like, I'm gonna try it, and got like a not two. And it's like, well, holy crap! You not only get it, you knocked it out of the park. You understand these books. We actually just fast forwarded through a large section of the adventure because you were able to do this. The whole adventure has just completely altered course for the better because of the skill roll. And then at the end, makes the accounting roll on the improvement, which means he doesn't get to approve it. And we're all sitting there going, well, that stinks because I wanted that skill to be improved. So I could see a GM pool where, because I like them rolling. I like they get excited at the rolls to see how they do. But I could also see a small GM pool of not much, 15 points maybe, where once they're done, the GM can step in and award points specifically to certain things that they thought the character or the player did very well on, and specifically wants those to improve. Because if you've got that character who does have that low skill and they save the day with it, and then they don't improve, and you're like, well, damn it, they should have improved because they did that. Or it's something like dodge, and during the course of the game, let's say you have a lot of combat, they roll 15 dodges, and then at that one roll, when they've got to improve it, that's the time they don't improve it. And you're like, they use the hell out of this. I want that to go up specifically. That I think it would be cool if the GM could then kind of step in and say, this goes up, and this goes up, but only those specific ones that I choose, because that is my way of acknowledging or rewarding what I consider to be something that was very good on either the player or the character's part, because they can't control how their dice fall, obviously. But I see that as being better for me, at least, than doing a milestone system, because I like them rolling skill improvements. I really enjoy that. I want the player that was actively engaged to have a potential of getting more points total than the one that was just kind of sitting there and not doing much. Because with that one, if it's 60 or whatever, both of them get 60. And the only
Right.
thing that the more skill they get to use is depends on how many they roll, but they still get the same number of points. And I find it better to let them roll, but I do like the idea of having a small little pool that the GM can use as their mortar to kind of patch any holes they see once those dice have fallen. Uh, One of the other methods that we do in our games is if the player gets like a critical success, instead of putting a little slash or a check in that box, I tell them put an X, because then when they roll improvement, I have them roll uh, with advantage, or I guess disadvantage, whichever one, where they're more likely to fail that improvement roll, because you want to fail it.
Sure,
So
sure.
I give them that, but it's only if they did super good on it. Yeah, or like I said, it's not one or an extreme success, but that way it's we're going to improve your chances of going up on this just a hair, but it's still up to the dice. So that is one method that I've done to kind of extra award something. It's still under that 10 cap. They still have to fail the roll, but they're more likely to. So
That's funny. Yeah. because I've done something similar actually. While this deviates a little bit from the milestone leveling, in the past I have implemented a an O1 result award. So if a player rolls a 0-1 when doing a certain skill, I had them check it, but then also circle the box so that you could really identify this skill had the 0-1 result. And then when it came time for an improvement and we got to that skill, oh, it has a check mark and the box is circled. I gave them a choice. I said, you have a choice. You can, because I didn't think to use the advantage disadvantage dice or penalty and bonus dice. I said you can either choose to take 5 points and just improve it by 5, period, or you can roll to see if you fail that percentage, fail your skill, and if you do, you can roll a d10 to see if you can add a d10 to it. And many times the player will say, I'll just take the 5, and it'll just go up by 5. But I've only done that for a 0-1. And then as an author, I have created some scenarios where this is, again, a little bit off topic, but I'll have tomes where not only can you gain mythos knowledge and spells, but I've had tomes where you read through the tome and this skill, maybe it's history or something like that, goes up by 2% or something.
Oh, absolutely. I can't say every tome I've done, just because I'm sure there was one that I didn't. I do have secondary advantage because the book talks about that, and it's one of the things that actually kind of gives me a bit of a twitch. Is the Keeper's Guide. It talks about they can gain other skills, but in the examples they actually don't show that on all of them, because it's like, yeah, your history should go up, or your just different other skills, your astronomy might go up, or things. There's a foreign language that should, or even their known language should have a good chance of going up a lot of the time. So yeah, I'll throw a couple other skills on there that get a 2% or a 3%, not much, but a kind of an added benefit in addition to the mythos and the potential of a spell. At the end of the day, your architecture goes up a hair because you've been reading all about this non-Euclidean architecture or whatnot. So I'm a big fan of doing that for, and not just the tomes, but even the occult books, because there's the occult books that don't help your mythos, but they can help other things. I like to
Mm-hmm.
give kind of an assortment of different little stuff that the character picks up in the course of reading that. So it's like your occult goes up by this. That's the main thing it's about. But on the side, you also get a couple points in these other things because they were related to that subject. History almost always going to be among them. So I like that as guarantees. But I said I'm more inclined to want to, instead of doing a milestone just pool, having that reserve that the GM gets to a lot. You
I
might have
do
it where
like that idea of a keeper reserve reward. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I mean, you might allow at your table for the player to give an argument as to where those 15 points should go, but I think ultimately that should be down to the keeper, as far as, you used this well, you used this cleverly. I want to encourage more of that right there. So I'm going to put this many points into this skill that you used in a way that impressed me. So that would be my method. Which I've never done it, so I don't know how well it'll work, but it sounds pretty plausible to me.
I like the sound of it too. Again, I thought the concept of milestone leveling was very interesting, and I just wondered how could it be applied to Call of Cthulhu? Would it even be practical or welcomed? But that's a conversation. Keepers and players who like the idea of milestone leveling, Yeah, you should think about it and maybe use it at your table. I think I'm starting to lean more in your direction, Seth. I really like the idea of maybe a reserve, a keeper reserve of points, very small, to kind of counteract things that I have seen where that player only got 2 points after having so many skills that were used successfully. He was just dejected that he only got such a little bit improved, and so that would have been a perfect place to kind of put in that GM fiat.
And that's a bummer. Like I said, the one that bums me the most is when, because there are certain times when they're rolling an improvement, I'm really paying attention because I want that skill to go up because they did great with it. Or it's like that accounting thing where it's like you only have a five in it. The chances of you screw it, this up and make it the roll and not improving, or it's not that big. And of course, that's what they do it. It's like, well, son of a bitch, I really wanted them to get that one. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care about any of them but that one because that one saved the day. That's when I would be all like, yeah, cool. I'm overriding that right now. And give yourself 6 points or 10 points or whatever on that because you impressed me. There's no way your character actually pulled that off and didn't improve because it was so low. You know, versus you've got your character, it's got an 80 in accounting, and they pick it up and they make it immediately, and then they roll a 90 something on the improvement, like, cool, and they roll and they get 10 points, and you're like, we actually that guy with a 5 should have learned something too. So that's the only times I'd move in and just, I'm overriding that. I want to reward you specifically, and that skill specifically. So that's more of my mindset.
I like it. I like it a lot. Seth, what are your thoughts on character death?
Like right now, like, sure, I'm for it. Well,
I'm
so
killing everybody.
yeah, it's one of those things. Like, it took my players years to realize that I talk about killing characters and all this constantly, and I'm like, I'm 95% more talk than action on that. Once again, I came from the olden ways of dungeon crawling and meat grinders. But with D&D, you got healing spells, divine resurrections, and I was way too liberal with resurrections when I was younger. As I would say, you die, you meet your god. They say da 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 to you. You're given this quest, and you go back. Like death was a revolving door, and it ended up becoming like where death was meaningless. So it was one of those, like, the player was happy they got to keep their character. Sometimes they might get some thing or quest from their god, but then at the end of the day, they didn't fear it. And so I like character death, especially in games like Call of Cthulhu that have that bit of a realistic edge where there's no magic healing. Or if there is magic healing, it costs your soul. And I think that Call of Cthulhu has a bad reputation of being a meat grinder game, primarily for a couple reasons. The big one, though, I think has to deal with convention scenario one shots, because even as you mentioned earlier, your characters, you kind of walk in disposable because you're never going to play them again, so you're not investing in the future. You're just investing in this 4 or 5 hours, and that's it. Those adventures tend to be a little bit more brutal because they aren't they know you're never going to play this character again, but also the players play a little bit more loose because they know they're never going to play those characters again. And I think that caused a lot of reputation with Call of Cthulhu, in addition to people would come from a background of games with healing potions and cleric spells and all of these ways to avoid death, and the idea that you've got 11 hit points, that's all you're ever going to have, and if you get hit, they ain't coming back before this adventure is done. So that one ghoul hitting you for a d6 or whatever it is, that's half your life right there. And if they hit you a second time, you might die. Or that one gun from that one random gangster might just kill you. And I think when players come from a mindset of damage is temporary because we can get rid of the damage quickly, and let's get back to the adventure, and I'm going to jump to action. And then they realize it's not, and their character dies because they played recklessly, thinking that that's how Call of Cthulhu is played, like it is with the other games they're familiar with. I think that's how a lot of that reputation came about. And I, however, didn't go straight from one to the other. We did Cyberpunk 2020 as a side game for several years, and then as our primary game for several years. We left everything else behind. We just played Cyberpunk, and that is just as brutal as Call of Cthulhu is. So we initially did have the surge of new game, characters dropping like flies, and then all of a sudden they started playing extremely smart. And they would use strategy. They would try to avoid direct combat as much as possible. They would try to role play through situations more because they knew that if guns got drawn, that they might lose somebody. When combat happened, they'd dive for cover and they'd scramble behind cover and they'd move and do all the stuff that could give their opponent a minus to hit them or give themselves a plus to hit their opponent. And combat was exciting, and the characters tended to live a lot longer. So when we then flipped to Call of Cthulhu, we didn't have the surge of PC's death that everybody talks about, because to my players, that was how we'd done it for so long. So I think, and this is one of my controversial opinions, one of the best things that can happen to a player is losing that first character that they had future aspirations for. Not a one shot. This is my character, and I'm going to carry him for so long, and they're going to have these life goals and all this. This is all their background and all that. To just have them die, which sucks, is a valuable lesson. It's like falling off a bike the first time. You learn something from the fact that sucked. And I think players play a lot smarter once they realize that the threat of death is very real. The GM will do it. It is easy to happen. You need to play smart, and you need to approach things less guns blazing at the first drop of a hat, because combat is scary and violent and horrible. So I'm all for PC death. I don't think you should necessarily run out to try to get them. Like I said, my bark's a lot worse than my bite, but it still happens because dice are bastards. And sometimes a player does something monumentally stupid. And then afterwards, you're like, dude, what the hell was that? And I'm like, I don't know.
I am loving Call of Cthulhu's new 7th edition combat system with the simultaneous rolling of fighting and fighting back, or fighting and someone's dodging. I love, ever since the beginning of the game, the way that hit points are calculated and the way that damage from weapons kind of relates to hit points. It has always felt very realistic to me that with blunt weapons or small weapons, even if they are impaling, it takes 2 to 3 hits from a small weapon to like bring you down, and that seems very realistic to me. Whereas with a firearm, you can be brought down with 1 hit, with one well rolled damage roll from a single firearm attack, or possibly 2. But I have always admired and appreciated the damage to hit point relationship and how it's been handled in Call of Cthulhu.
Well, yeah, but now I'd always try to pitch Cyberpunk to people. Why I like that is my example would be like in D&D, your characters become these superhero demigods, to where you've got 100 hit points, and that kobold with the rusty dagger that used to be a threat to you, you could literally just sit there and drink tea while that thing just keeps stabbing you, and it does not threaten you in any way. But in the types of games that we like Call of Cthulhu, no matter how awesome you get, a street kid with a cheap little 22 pistol can kill you just as dead as they could at the beginning. And the only difference now is might be your dodge or your equipment, but it's still a very realistic threat. There is no, oh, these aren't a threat to me anymore. I'm not going to take this as seriously as I used to. It's always, this can kill me dead as a hammer. I should always approach these very, very seriously. One of the things that in the gaming culture that I found kind of odd is it is more common now that players seem to take death, character death, as the unimaginable, as if that would be the worst thing ever to happen. And I think that might be due to in fifth edition D&D, which is the most popular. D&D is always seems to be the gateway for everyone's first gaming before they branch off. At least it was for both of us. In fifth edition, I consider dying to be kind of an accomplishment. Like to have a character die in that game is kind of impressive to me, because when we played that for our as our primary for a while, one of the things that caused it to lose its luster was after months and months, we realized that there didn't seem to be anything that could actually cause a character to be killed. And even that realization, my players kind of felt like the sheen suddenly wore off. They felt like they felt less accomplished in what they had done, because all those times they thought that they had succeeded, by the skin of their teeth. Maybe they didn't, because it's kind of hard to die in that game. So I think the idea that the players have gotten used to that, and the concept that a character it shouldn't die, they can't die, they should always survive to fight again another day, is so off-putting that it's a threat that culturally in the gaming community, I think that people don't appreciate the improvement that comes out of it.
Yeah. The campaign that I'm running, Spawn of Azathoth, I have really appreciated how there are scenes, challenges that arise in that campaign, and more often than not, the players guided their characters into danger in order to achieve the goals that they were looking to achieve. And they had fun with it by really, they felt that their characters' lives were on the line. And I will say, those lives, they were on the line. And as you've pointed out, the dice gods are a fickle bitch. And I have been rolling these dice and trying at some points to kill these characters, because it just felt like this is a good time for a poignant character death. And god damn me and my dice, they just won't kill them. And I have to say, for my anniversary, my lovely beautiful bride got me a lovely wonderful set of these Dogmite solid wood dice, and they're beautiful, but I need a chicken foot to kill the curse on them, because they won't let me kill anybody. So I've had to retire my Dogmite dice, and now I'm just using a whole bowl of colorful, polyhedrals that are easy to read, and I'm hoping eventually these things will kill somebody. But my players are just like, they're starting to get emboldened, and I need to take them down a couple of pegs, I think, because my dice just won't kill them. But that's neither here nor there. That's a rant for another day.
See, mine is I don't want to kill them. I want them to know it's right there. Like I want to truly threaten them. So I've talked before. We've had characters of Call of Cthulhu games last very, very, very long times. And before we even flipped to pulp, like we had, characters that would go a dozen adventures and they were still around. So even as though I'm a huge proponent too, the best lesson a player can really have is to lose that first character. I don't like killing characters. I like to make them afraid of it, and I like them to know that that has actual teeth. And sometimes it just happens, and that can suck. If you do have a character get killed, you don't want them to. Now the whole group is kind of suffering, or we're in the middle of the adventure, and you're looking over there at Bobby, and you're like, "Well, let's see how we can figure out how to even remotely come up with how we're going to bring a new character in, because you are, trapped in this tomb that no living person has been in 10,000 years. Where the hell is this other character even gonna come from?" In old D&D, I think it was first edition. I think the rule was, if a character dies, because that was a lot more meat grindery than the game is now, you find the next character like tied up in the next room.
Absolutely.
Was
Yeah.
that it, or did I just make that up? Like,
No, no, no. Yeah, and that has become kind of a staple in fantasy games, especially in low level games where uh, characters have fewer hit points. Especially your wizards, right? There are scenarios, low level scenarios that are written with caches of prisoners that can be freed and used as new PCs, and that's happening in lots of games. So the Goodman Games Sailor on the Starless Sea scenario, you initially are kind of getting into a keep that has, it's being run, and it's been polluted or whatever by these beastmen, and some of the villagers are captive in that keep. And if your characters, through that first half of the scenario, start dying off, there's a cache of prisoners that you can free and arm to the teeth with the equipment of the guy that just died, and now suddenly you've got a new character to go in. And that's Dungeon Crawl Classics, but that's true in Dungeons and Dragons, and I think it's true in many of the fantasy games, and you do see it more often in the lower leveled adventures, because the assumption is that your characters are coming in with low level characters, low level hit points. As you get into the higher scenarios, that doesn't happen quite so often, because your demigods that you're running have these, larger stores of hit points and can take more abuse,
yeah,
and
you're
more healing abilities are introduced, and you can pump up
there's
faster.
also it's kind of a mindset, and I think all of us do it, where there's kind of an assumption that a low level character is more likely going to be a newer player, and a high level character is more of a veteran player. And a veteran player will, of course, play a bit smarter because they understand certain aspects of the game mechanics that allows them to, take advantage of. I know if I do this, I get pluses, or I'm harder to hit, or whatnot. It's an odd assumption because you could play for 20 years, start a new campaign, you're all first level characters, but you still have all of the knowledge that 20 years has given you as a player. Or you can be a brand new character. You just start off with the 15th level. A new player start off with the 15th level character. But it's kind of an odd assumption that if you're low level, you're probably newer than if you are high level. So I think the other reason they do that is we're going to give you these caches because you're new, and you probably don't know not to dive into the pool of acid to get the little gold thing you see at the bottom that's really just designed as bait. But once you get your new character in the next room, you'll know that that's probably not how you should immediately you try to get that out. So I'm all for having like NPCs that are available, and your character can be among them. I've also had it where if a character dies halfway through a session, and that sucks. If they're going to die, I'd like it to be at the end of the session. But if they die
Hmm.
halfway through, And it could be I screwed up as the GM. It could be their dice screwed up or they did something. So whatever reason, doesn't matter. They're dead, and now we're in the middle of a game, and Bobby is just sitting there. I like having some NPC available or a means to bring in another character. So sometimes I'll have like an NPC companion with them. It's like, okay, well, until we get to a spot where we can even bring in a new character, play this guy. Try to keep him alive. I'd like to keep them around after this, but that way, because if they don't have a character ready to go, if they're not like the old school gamers where death was constant and you literally had a folder full of characters just ready to drop, and they're like, oh, I don't want to take however long to make a new character. I don't have that much time. The session will be over by then. Or you're just in a spot you can't bring one in because you are in the sealed dungeon that nobody has been in for 10,000 years. Where the hell are you going to find a new guy? But we got this NPC, play him. They're now a PC just to keep going. But I always find that death in the middle of an adventure can be such a pain in the butt because I actually always love as a backdrop for it to be somewhere remote that no one has been in X number millennia. And the only problem is that lifeline is gone versus I think we had a character once died in the tombs underneath Castle Ravenloft. And we're at the bottom of Castle Ravenloft, but there's a stairwell this tower stairwell that goes down from the top of the tower all the way to the tomb. And the next character came rappelling down the shaft that's down the middle of this tower. Just a few minutes later, he's like, oh, hey, there's somebody here. And that's how we brought in the new characters because there was at least a population nearby. We're in the bottom of the dungeon, but sure, there's ways we could get somebody in there to be the new PC. So, but I also
I love
hate
that's repelling because maybe there's a trap on the stairs and he didn't trigger it because he repelled,
just comes repelling down like, oh, whoops. I didn't know this was your claim already. And would you like for me to join you? A character death, though, in a level-based game, I actually always found to be the biggest pain in the ass. Because let's say you're working on your campaign, everybody is 8th and 9th level. We're about to go kill the demon prince or whatever the powerful bad guy is, and a character just dies. And it might have been a great death. I mean, it could have been a beautifully noble death, or it could have just been a crappy roll and they fell into a sphere of annihilation or whatever. And then there's the question of like, okay, you're going to bring in a new character, but are you going to bring in a low-level character, or are we just going to hand you a character that's 8th or 9th level and just as powerful as these other characters that have like slowly worked their way there through blood, sweat, and tears? Like, is it fair to them that you walk in just as powerful as they are and their accomplishments really might not have meant as much?
Fred the Squire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or do you bring in Fred the Squire, who's going to die, so easy because they're in a campaign meant for 8th and 9th level characters and they're a 2nd level person that's got a dozen hit points and nothing.
I carry Fred by the belt as a shield.
It always feels so awkward in a level based game if you do have to bring another character in, because I feel it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Because I've made the mistake of, okay, well, you're going to come in at like half their level at the amount of XPs these guys are getting. You'll catch up real fast because their XP threshold is so big and yours is so low that if you're all getting the same number of experience points, you're going to shoot up and catch up to them, no problem. And that character was just fodder. And and then I feel like a jerk because I pretty much like, oh, I'm sorry you died. Let me go ahead and hobble you so that happens again by having a weak character. Or I've also had him pull in a character that was just as powerful, and the accomplishment of getting that level was kind of lessened, not just for that player, but for the other players there. And I didn't like that. One of the reasons I also like a skill-based game is if you're very experienced, Call of Cthulhu character goes away or dies or whatever, and a new one comes in, they're still pretty comparable to the people that are there. Yeah, the people that are going to have their skills theoretically, providing they don't roll like that one player you talked about earlier, and they only go up once, 2 points, they're going to be better at a lot of stuff. But it's not like that new character is useless in comparison. That new character, it could actually be a hell of a lot better at certain things that those veteran characters have nothing. Because this one walks in, is like, I have an accounting of 80. Give me those books, and I'll find the stuff in them, or whatnot. And that was actually one of the big reasons for the appeal for a skill based game, is if character death happens, then it's not this huge downer as far as like, well, the whole game kind of suffers because either we bring you in low level, that the average level of the whole group just dropped, or something else. So
Yeah, I mean, agree. Yes, I hear what you're saying, because if we think about and maybe try and do some faux comparison, the Masks of Nyarlathotep campaign. If we were to think of it as a level based campaign, I mean that's a 7th to 12th level campaign, right? I mean it's not an entry level campaign. Yet you can have characters die halfway through that campaign and bring in new characters, and they're different because they have different skill focuses, but they're still as comparable as the characters who've been starting this campaign or playing this campaign from the New York chapter. You know what I mean? They're just, it's not like you have to play catch up or something to become as useful as the characters who have come in before. Something I kind of you touched on earlier is actually ways or sources that players could mine in order to gain new characters into an ongoing Call of Cthulhu campaign, which would be like NPCs who are traveling with the PC group, or NPCs who are part of that area. If anyone is interested in maybe kind of seeing that in action, and kind of seeing how other people are running something like that, the HP Lovecraft Historical Society, this group, they produce some amazing audio dramas that they call the Dark Adventure Radio Theater, or DART for short. And these audio dramas, many of them are audio dramatizations of H.P. Lovecraft's stories. So you've got Call of Cthulhu, Shadow over Innsmouth, Dunwich Horror. You've got all these scenarios or stories, but they've also been adapting Call of Cthulhu campaigns. So they have an audio drama for the Brotherhood of the Beast, which was an early campaign for Call of Cthulhu. They have the campaign, The Masks of Nyarlathotep. It is a 6-disc audio dramatization of the campaign, and it's these characters, and I don't know if these people, the players, did they run a game and then kind of took notes and then went, hey, let's dramatize what we played, and so then they did a dramatization of it, because this is not, these DART audio dramas, they're not actual plays. You're not listening to players at a table and a game master, a keeper running the game. They're radio dramas. They're set up, and it's full audio and sound effects, and it's really meant to sound like a 1920s or 1930s radio serial, and they're amazing. And so if you listen to their Masks of Nyarlathotep campaign, it's so funny because at one point the cast of characters that we're listening to, one of the characters is he takes a lot of sand loss, right? He takes a lot of sand loss, and we meet up with a doctor who's treating him, and then suddenly the doctor gets kind of whisked into the mystery and has to escape and leave the city along with the characters. And then he's like, yes, my friends, I'm with you in this. And suddenly we have a new PC, right? And the it's so cool. And so I encourage keepers, hey, listen to some of these things, and you can get ideas on how you could integrate NPCs and fold them into becoming playable characters. Kind of going with my own experience again, using my run of Spawn of Azathoth as an example. We're all experienced players who are doing this, and so we thought about what we were getting into, and we thought about way at the beginning of this, which now is a year. We've been doing this now for a year. When we made our characters, we thought, okay, during our character creation session, our session 0, we said we're probably going to have some character death. Let's think about this ahead of time, and we all made 2 characters. And not only did they make 2 characters, we started thinking about relationships and how they knew each other ahead of time. And we pre-established, so we don't have to actually state it as we're playing the campaign. It was just going to be a known factor that as the characters, as they're going through the campaign, it will be their habit to take journal notes and send correspondence, whether it's letters or telegrams, but they're sending correspondence basically back to home base where these backup characters have continual access.
So the backup characters are the pen pals of the primary characters.
They're the pen pals, yeah. And so they're getting all this knowledge as the campaign, and I'm sure they're like, whoa, this is crazy, and they're just they're sitting in the dugout waiting to get called up to the mound, right? And it's so funny because as this campaign has been unfolding, we've basically had 2 players running new characters, and neither of them are running their pre-created backup characters. So one character, because this doesn't, I mean, I guess this is kind of spoilery, but it's a 40-year-old campaign, so I'm going to do it anyways. But in Spawn of Azathoth, the kind of MacGuffin that starts the whole thing is a friend that all of the PCs know. A friend has died, and they attend his funeral and everything. But lo and behold, you run into your dead friend. You find his soul in the Dreamlands as he's being tortured in the Dreamlands. And my characters, because they had an encounter with a mythos god in the Dreamlands, and it blasted their sanity but didn't completely destroy them. And he basically said, you could bring the tortured one here and make a wish or whatever, and he can be brought back to life. The characters kind of understood and kind of misinterpreted what that was saying, and so they brought the MacGuffin character who kind of started the whole campaign, this dead, this soul of this character who has died in the real world. And they brought him to this god, and so one of the player characters said, I give of myself. And I was like, really? Yes. Okay. And so I killed that character, but then the soul of the dead MacGuffin character inhabited his body, and so he was reincarnated as the soul of the MacGuffin character. So now we have the character whose death kicked off the entire campaign. He is back alive, but in somebody else's body. So that has happened, and that's been a lot of fun. And then another character, just basically, he was such a mentally fragile character, he ended up going insane. And instead of engaging the backup character that he had created during our session 0, he's like, hey, I have this other idea for a psychiatrist who was definitely going to be working with or has treated my guy. He's just going to come in instead. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's bring that guy in.
I have a player who, my buddy Jesse, I've played with him for, we're almost to 22 years now. So I've played with this guy for a long time. And he has an addiction to making characters. It is sometimes entertaining. It is sometimes maddening. But so he loves making. Well, back in college when we're all broke, he had other to do. So he'd make characters. That was like his hobby. But what he'd do is he would steal or borrow or whatever. He'd get a hold of all my blank character sheets that I had because I went to the school campus library or the photocopier, and they were like 10 cents each for a double sided thing. So I dropped like $5 at the thing, and I made a bunch of character sheets. Well, I had a game where I needed a character sheet, and I was out. He had slowly, over a couple of months, pilfered all of my backup character sheets to make characters with. And I actually found probably about 2 months ago a cache of extra first edition AD&D character sheets that I had shoved in an old folder because I would then print off extra copies and I would hide them. That way, because I always had my stuff in like a milk crate where all my books were, and like they would just slowly start missing. So I had these little caches. So I actually found a cache not that long ago, and I nearly gave it to him, just like, "Here you go, man. We haven't played this game in years, but I was hiding these from you back in 2002." But so what he would do is he very often he will have his character, and then he'll tell me about his backup character, and I love the backup character 1,000 times more than whichever one he chose to play. Like I have no idea what is his inspiration to say this is the one that I want to play, because I think it's very often the first one he does, but then he figures out how to make a better character. So the second one is always better, or the third or the fourth. But he's got a backup character that I really want, and I will never get to see them because if they lose his first character, and I'm like, okay, now we're going to bring in so and so. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, he'll then bust out this other one. It's like, I want to try them. This character I just made up just now. It sucks. And I'm like, okay, because I want to play the character he wants. But so all I can be is like, well, man, I really liked that. That was like, oh no, you'll see this. It'll be great. And sometimes he's right. Very often we'll play, for a long time, and I'm always wanting this one character that he teased me with as his backup character, and I'll never ever get to see this damn thing because
That's
there's
awesome.
always this new dude that just shows up. Is like, I'm now the new backup. Like, yeah, I think in a lethal game, a backup character is a good idea. I've heard of groups that would play traveler campaigns that literally had backup characters in the low berth freezers aboard their ship.
Nice.
Just
Nice.
they'd lose a member of their party, and they just crack open a cold one and thaw out the next character. I always found that kind of weird. Of like, so you're joining a mercenary company, and your job is you're going to freeze for an indeterminate amount of time because reasons I don't know, but hey, that's how they do it. That's cool. And then of course you have games like Aliens or Alien. I guess I always add a plural to it, but it's Alien, which is a lethal as hell system. And I always there's a fear of some of them of like, well, what happens if they die? And we've always the two times that I've done Alien, there's always been a backup somewhere. There's in Hope's Last Day, because you're on this in Hadley's Hope, as Hadley's Hope is falling. Well, there's 1,001 places they might come across the new backup character running up a hallway who is someone that can join the party, or if there is an NPC that's established, you could bring them in. But it's just as easy that Tom the mechanic is around the next corner, and we can play that character and just keep going.
Yep. I love Alien. I've created 2 characters that I always bring in and have available in the scenario Hope's Last Day. One is a kid. I made a kid character who's trying to run around, very similar to Newt, but this is obviously before all the other people have died, and Newt's the sole survivor. So I have one kid, and then I have one synthetic mechanic who is already damaged. One arm is already torn off.
See, I was actually
And
just about to say he should be damaged and missing an arm. So
yes,
yes,
yeah.
this
So
is why I like you, John.
yeah, so
You're two steps ahead of me.
yeah, the synthetic is already, and he's not an evil synthetic. He's totally a good. Humans are awesome. I will protect humans, but he's, because of the severe damage to him, he's also a little bit twitchy and a little bit like confused, and like, I don't know what happened to my arm, and he's like confused on what the damage was that's happened to him. And also because of the obvious damage and everything, the aliens are already just simply avoiding him, right? And so I have these two characters that can be used to make things weird or dangerous or more troublesome for the PCs, but they're also available to instantly become PCs.
No, yeah, so dies, and like you've got him raring to go. You can just have like the next door opens, and that one armless android walks in. It's like, oh, hey, you're here. Good. I thought everyone was dead, and now I'm in the party. Did you ever see I guess it's an old movie now, the Gamers, where the character
I
dies,
have,
or they bring in the
but
backup
I
character
don't
and say,
remember it. I don't
"Oh,
remember it. I've
the,
seen it a long time ago.
you seem trustworthy. Would you like to join our party?" The GM's like, "I'd like you to roleplay this," and that's how they roleplay. We've done that joke for years. Of you seem
Yes,
trustworthy. It's like, which
yes,
is
I've
weird
heard
because I
people.
give that joke and I'm still the one going, "Hey guys, could we try to like role play this a bit? Like, can we just kind of have a little bit of interaction of you meeting each other, not just you seem trustworthy?" And they're like, "Yeah, whatever." Just,
Yep, I've seen that actually. If memory serves, there are some great actual play audios of the yogsothoth.com Bradford players as
mhm.
they play Massive Nyarlathotep and Horror on the Orient Express. And if memory serves, I think a player character needed a new character, a backup character, and it ended up being like the bellhop or something of a hotel. And I think the players did that exact thing where they're like, "You're the bellhop. You seem trustworthy. Would you like to join us?" And the bellhop's like, "Of course I will. How can I help you?" And then just became a character. If memory serves, it's been a while since I've listened to those, but yeah, that's funny.
I love also the idea of like nameless NPCs somehow becoming the characters. My first adventure of yours that I ever played was the Lost Expedition, and in it you've got they go to the land of the lost world of dinosaurs or whatnot. Super pulpy
Thank you
adventure,
for calling it Land of the Lost. That's because that
uh,
was in my mind.
and so it's you're not going to find a character tied up in the next room very likely, but what you do have is like 20 Pac-Men that are like 20 like Chinese Pac-Men that at some point may assist a guy for a betrayal. I think it'd be just amazing if the PCs walk in and who walks out are five former Chinese Pac-Men that were just laborers at some dig site that are now the PCs. Just come staggering out of the land of the lost to then go off on other adventures. They were nameless NPCs that are now the actual focus behind the future adventures or something. Where
They
it's
have
like
seen things.
yeah, so like it's like you've got your campaign. It's like they're all the former bellhops or the taxi drivers or just the NPCs in the background who suddenly step up and save the day when the heroes have expired. Now, when it comes to PC death, there's also a theory that I agree with, but I also towards some of the ways that it has been taken is that anytime a character does die, it should be meaningful. And I got into a conversation once with a commenter on my YouTube channel that I do, where if a character death is actually must be agreed upon by the party. So if a character dies, they have it set up to where the whole table determines if it's okay that that character should die. And if they say no, the character lives. And of course, I look at that, and the first thing I thought was like, "Oh my god, that would be so abused. Like, it just takes one jerk. Like, No, no. But that's also because I've played with some people that would have used that, but it evidently works for them. But they say that every character death should have be some huge meaning that then pushes the plot forward or something like that. And in a storybook situation, I totally agree. However, games don't. Even though we do a storytelling, don't work like storytellings. But how do you feel about that? Where character death should only have meaning or be saved for those dramatic times where it is a sacrifice that pushes the narrative. An example would be in the movie The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser one, the only movie that's called The Mummy out there. The rest of them didn't exist. There is the guy who runs the museum, the bald guy who is Evie's boss, and
Uh-huh.
and he ends up he's in the secret society. And at one point they're getting attacked by the horde of Iomatep's minions, and the dude like whips a Kopesh out of nowhere. I have no idea where this guy was hiding this sword, out of the blue, and he's like, "You get in that sewer tunnel, I'll hold him off," and then he gets devoured by the minions or whatnot. And it was a very meaningful death. They were able to escape because he sacrificed himself. It's like, so they say it should be like that. They sacrificed themselves so they could escape. How do you feel about that? What if a character just dies?
I, for myself, I am not. I'm not in favor of a meaningless death. So where I come from with that is, if a character needs to achieve a skill to do something, and usually it'll be something like a climb or a jump, right? I find it horrible for a character, because climb and jump falling damage can be pretty lethal.
over
And I
over the
think it's,
past 20 something years, my wife has lost more characters due to gravity than anything else. I like She hates any game, no matter what system, where she has to do a climb, because that has killed her
yep.
or caused her to be so injured for the rest of the adventure that like a lot of her characters now always start off with like a ridiculous climb because that is her curse. She'll still fail it. But anyways, go on.
I I have I have made the mistake of writing adventures where I thought it would be neat for this to be a challenge point in the scenario, and so have climb rolls be, because when I write scenarios, I try to have different challenge points throughout the scenario that would require different skill sets to be leveraged. And so in this one that I had written, I wanted it to be a physical challenge, and so I wrote climb. And then I didn't. It was I poorly designed it because I wasn't thinking about the kind of damage that could result from failure. And if you do it rules as written, yeah, I mean the damage can stack up pretty
Oh,
quickly and kill you. And I find that terrible. So, you know, in that instance, I would adjudicate a survival. Now, maybe there's a horrible injury or something like that, but I would adjudicate a survival and save a PC death for something where maybe the character is choosing to do self-sacrifice so that they can hold back a tide so that others can survive, or they have encountered a big bad and the PCs chose to engage that big bad with violence. Then I'm okay with that. But yeah, I'm meaningless deaths for me are due to a failed skill roll of some sort, and I find that very anticlimactic.
and the thing is, meaningless deaths for me as a GM suck. I hate them. No one likes them. No one in the room likes that. The climb one that has got me at old, like old D&D and whatnot. You made a climb check every like 10 feet or every 20 feet or something. So, but I always like larger than life. So it's like a 200-foot cliff. Well, even if their climb is 95, if you have to make that roll 10 times, the probability that one of them will fail is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've seen some either older Call of Cthulhu scenarios or the self pub, the Miskatonic Repository, where they put multiple ones on there. It's like that serves no purpose. Give me one, and a failure is something bad happens. Allow a push roll, allow something to save the day, but I don't want a character dying from falling off a cliff. I have done that, obviously, by the story of my wife. Now, I do have a few caveats, though, because I do want a meaningful death. I think that's more fun for everyone involved. But I'm not going to save you if you just do something stupid. Like, not like a meaningless death where it is the character tried something either because A, they didn't know better, or B, just the dice screwed them for something mundane like climbing the cliff or opening the door, whatever. But if they do something just flagrantly stupid or reckless, and that ends up the way that everybody watching knew that was going to end up, that's how it ended up. If you're trying and it didn't work, that's one thing. If you're just being an idiot, I my elasticity on that is pretty limiting, and it's in a ratio of how long you've been playing. If it's your first game, I'm a lot more forgiving. If you've played for the past 10, 15, 20 years, it is granite hard of like, so you did this, huh? You're like, yeah, I tied the boa constrictor on my neck, and I leapt out of the airplane to use it as a bungee cord. Well, that was stupid. I cannot, in good conscience,
You see your own body as your head pops off.
I cannot, in good conscience, allow you to live through this. It's like, but it was meaningless. It was meaningless because you did something mind-blowingly stupid. When we did a campaign of Two-Headed Serpent, and I did a huge video blog of this, I had a character in the middle of that die pointlessly. And it's a player who is known to either the first inkling, I guess he's getting bored or feels that he hasn't had the spotlight long enough, or whatever reason, can go from I play very smart and very careful to I play like I'm a 7-year-old that's had too much sugar on a dime. I love them. I know my players' faults. So they had these little floating bubble pod things that were really cool, and they were escaping a volcano that could and you're supposed to get in the bubble pod things. They fly away to safety as the volcano erupts. It's amazing, but not this one. At that moment, he decided to not take the fly up out of the caldera of the volcano the way everyone else already had been. He decided at 200 miles an hour or whatever it was to shoot through the mazework of tunnels through the place to go out the other end. Like literally turned from the giant exit that other characters are taking at that moment to, at as fast as he can go, try to pinball his way through the building. No reason for it. He just thought it'd be fun. And that was when he fumbled. And his little piloting check thing, I think it's based off intelligence or something, at full speed, which was like 200 miles an hour. And it killed him. I wasn't even going to try to play that one as far as now in Pulp Cthulhu, if he has enough luck, he can survive. And if he did that, it's like lesson learned. He didn't have the luck because he had squandered his luck on something else already. So that character died right then in the middle of it for no reason. And I still stand by that because it was like, that was stupid. I don't know. Now, my example by another player, and I love to give as far as stupid deaths, and this was actually one that is completely my fault and what I hold on to as far as the most pointless death I've ever had in a game. I've had a few, but this is the king. We were playing Cyberpunk 2020 modified to a 1920s pulp game. So we're pretty much playing Call of Cthulhu with cyberpunk rules because my players didn't want to learn a new system, and we were in love with the interlock system at the time. So this is many years ago. They were on their way to the adventure. They figured out that they needed to go to some house on the opposite side of the state or another state over. So they're driving their little Model T car there. They stop at a little hotel, and in that system, you had a -3 or something on a skill if you've never used the skill before. And a character played by my buddy George picked up a shotgun. And he wanted to, before they get to the bad guy, not have the penalty for having never used a shotgun before. He didn't mind going in there with a skill of 0. It's completely based off his stats. He's not going to be great with a shotgun, but the -3 on top of it, he didn't want to deal with. So after they stop at the hotel, he goes up behind this place. It's the middle of nowhere. They set up some old CADs. He's going to try out his brand new double-barrel shotgun that he picked up at the hardware store on the way. And he fumbled it. And then they have the fumble table, so he rolls the fumble. And lo and behold, you hit yourself. Okay, he hits yourself. Where do you hit yourself? Lo and behold, he shoots himself in the head with a shotgun, which we just took it as basically the shotgun. Killed the character. And this was something that the player has all of the tables, the charts. He rolls this and basically tells me he walked out behind this hotel that they stopped at in the middle of nowhere in like Pennsylvania or something, set up some Coke bottles or tin cans or something, loaded his double-barrel shotgun, and immediately blew his own head off.
Oh my god!
And I think I defined that what is like, the which if you've ever done 80 shooting and with someone who's new, and you probably see this because there's a certain level of butthole tightening when you see somebody do this, like takes the loaded gun and kind of plants it butt first on stock first throughout their hand on it, and it's like on their foot, and they're kind of kicking their foot, and you can see that barrel leading close to their head. You're like, no, whoa, never do that with a loaded gun. Have you ever had that, or was that just me that has been around an idiot before? And you have to
hopefully just you.
Okay, horrifying moment of like, no, you always point that away. So it's like, this character is so new, he didn't know why. It was one of those old types where you have to click the hammers back, and it caught his pants, blew his head off. It wasn't, looking down the barrel, he blew his head off. So here we are. We're almost at the bad guy's lair in the middle of nowhere. We stop at random motel, and a character who's been playing for a while literally just blew his head off with a shotgun. So the rest of the characters, they quietly get in their car, they drive away. I have no idea what the motel owner thought. So we went with it. That's how the rules were as written.
Oh my god!
And it's a funny story to tell,
Oh
but
my
for
god!
us, no one in the room liked that. Like after we got done laughing, it's like, well, son of a bitch, we're X number of miles from a town outside of some crappy little town that we're headed to. Our character just died for no reason whatsoever. That absolutely sucked. And so at the time, I was the type of GM that's like, well, sorry, man, that's what happens. And we brought in a new character once they arrived at the town, and we kept going. Now, at this point in my RPG career, I would not have allowed a character to die in that manner because the player did nothing wrong. And I wouldn't have done. Now, I might have had a horrible injury. I might have had,
and the destruction of the weapon.
The weapon's destroyed, or he has injured himself. But the idea of like they have their meal, and he takes some old soup cans and stuff, goes out behind the motel, and literally just eats a shotgun. I would never do that again. So the player was giving me some grief. He brought that up, and I'm still apologizing. It's been over a decade. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm sorry that I actually stuck to the rules on that one, because that was a bad call on my part. That was a pointless death. We can laugh about it now, but oh, Jesus, I would never do that again.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, I got to say, hopefully through some kind of between our ramblings, I hope listeners have gained insight. We'll
I
call
don't.
it
I
insight.
think. I think we lost the target early on at this topic.
Yeah,
Just wandered into the desert.
yeah. We'll sum up with characters can die in Call of Cthulhu. Deal with it.
Well, it's that we enjoy it. However, it shouldn't be just totally pointless. But at the same
True.
time, I think they play better if they know it is a serious risk. For Call of Cthulhu, a lot of people talk about it doesn't have a good combat system. I think actually it has a great combat system, but
I love it.
they will drop prone the minute a firefight starts. They drop prone. Why? Gives you a bonus die to hit your opponent. Gives them a minus to hit you. So they will jump behind cover. They will do all of these things to basically strategize and play smart. When they have a threat, they know that death could happen at any moment. And they play smarter. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes they play smart. Sometimes they blow their head off with a shotgun behind a roadside motel in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. God, I still feel terrible
Wow.
about this.
Wow. That's awesome. Mm.
I've had pointless deaths, but that is the king of. I stuck to the rules a little too hard and allowed that to actually happen.
That's good though.
That's
That's a good story. I
that's
like
my
it.
bad game master confession.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. All right, Seth. Let's bring this horse back into the barn.
Okay.
Modern Mythos, we have a Patreon, and we've got a lot of fantastic supporters. Want to thank you all. I know in the past we've thanked John Sumrow and Joe Webb, but I think I've dropped the ball, and so I've got a lot of people I want to thank for joining our Patreon and supporting the show. Andy Meisem, thank you so much. Orrin Mayer, Weston Flippo, Mr. Calvin Cooper,
Make sure it's Mr.
Mr. Calvin Cooper, yes. Brolin Graham, Robin Goodfellow, Clyde Clark, Anders Bentzen, I believe is how it's pronounced. Bentzen.
Please let me take this one. Please let me take this one. Please let me
Yes,
take
go
this.
right ahead.
Okay. And finally, the Farquhar.
Very well said.
Is that what it is?
I think it's Farquhar. Yeah.
It is the Farquhar,
The Farquhar.
which that's I don't know. It sounds ominous.
It is very ominous. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you so much.
We've got a couple of different tiers available for those who just want to kind of help out the show. We really appreciate it. Those who want to support at a little bit of higher level. Seth and I are creating unique artifacts, all kinds of different things. They're weapons, they're books, they're toys. It's just a wide variety of these unique artifacts, and we will personalize them to you if you really kind of help out and support the show. I think it's at the $10 a month mark, if memory serves. But please go to our Patreon. We'll have a link in the show notes where you can get more information on that. And at the end of the year, I think we're going to try and do this on an annual basis. At the end of each calendar year, we're going to collect those artifacts that have been claimed by our supporting patrons, and we'll publish them on the Miskatonic repository.
Which ones have we claimed so far?
Wow. Well, we've had quite a few that have been claimed. I can open up here something real quick and take a look here. So we've had the session notes of Dr. Orrin Mayer out there. Filippo's puzzle has been claimed. Misem's Hand of Glory.
Oh, we did the Hand of Glory one.
We did do the Hand of Glory. We have the Quartz Waltz, which was claimed, and also the Pyramid of Ancient Truth.
Oh, it got taken?
It did get taken.
Oh, I love that
So,
one. The Mythos powered Magic 8 Ball.
Yes, that is an awesome one.
Who got the pyramid?
Caleb Rochelle.
Caleb. Congratulations. I love that one.
Yeah. That's also one of my favorites. I do love that one. So, yeah, if you are interested in supporting the show and maybe would like to have your own unique artifact, Call of Cthulhu artifact, please support us and we will create something for you.
So very quickly on that particular subject, when John and I make these, we try to come up with these artifacts throughout the year. That way, we've always got fresh ideas, and we're not trying to do anything against the wall, and we end up recycling some of the same things. Uh, John, was it like 1:30 in the morning? You opened up the
Mm,
share drive and you saw me typing one out, and
I
it,
did.
it was the most awkward, like, oh, fancy bumping into you here. So I think it was the camera. They could take pictures of the past. So like, well, I had this kind of moment of inspiration late at night. I figured I'd at least jot it down before I forgot. Otherwise, I'd wake up in the morning. But it's like, why are you on here at 1:30? Why are you on here at 1:30?
That's the fun part about Google Drive. I love it.
But thank you so much, guys.
Yes, we could not do the show without your support. So thank you so much. We have a Discord.
Yeah.
So please don't forget the Discord. Come on out. It's getting more and more lively. I'm on there all the time. So please come out and join our Discord.
I'm finally becoming active on there. I at least I've got so many things that bring me on Discord that I at least do log on, and then when I'm on, I go and got to see what people are talking about on there. My biggest problem was for the longest time, people would talk on Discord like, "Is Seth here?" And you'd be like, "He's somewhere," because I only got on like once every 3 weeks. So
Yes.
I'm down to like
You
once
know,
every 2 days.
Seth, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but recently, just because I had some extra energy, I went on to our Patreon actually, and I sent a note out to our patrons, and I said, "Does anybody want to play a game? Because I want to do stuff with our patrons." And I actually have an idea for a very short con length scenario that I wanted to try out because I'm going to run it during the Good Friends of Jackson Elias Con. Now, in full disclosure, it's not a scenario that I've written. What I've done is this whole 40th anniversary of Call of Cthulhu got me looking back at my first edition copy of the box set and the rule book that came with that and the scenarios that came in the first edition. And one of the scenarios in the first edition, or available in first edition and available in second editions, and which will be reprinted with this 40th anniversary Kickstarter that just ended, is called the Brockford House. And it's kind of interesting.
I've never read that one.
The Brockford House, it doesn't have a great reputation because, and deservedly so, because it's not a great scenario. It's not very well written. And so I actually had an idea on how to kind of overlay a better hook to bring people to that house and to have the things happen at that house it's more like what's written for it. So 90% of it I left the same. I just really wanted to change the opening hook to get people to this house, which I did. And so I put on Patreon, I said, "Hey, anybody want to play a game?" And I got some responders, some of our patrons responded. We went to our Discord. We played using Discord as the ability for us to talk to each other, and we had a really good time. And so I'm going to be running this game at the Good Friends of Jackson Elias Con in late August. I've retitled it, so it's no longer, I don't call it the Brockford House. I now call it VRBO, Vacation Rental by a Cult. And they had a good time, and I had a good time too. So
I would have
that'll
called it
be fun.
the Brockford Files, but
Oh, the Brockford Files. That's funny. I like that.
well, we can't do this show alone. We want to thank our amazing editors, Max Mahaffa and Edwin Nagy, and their hard work and keen skills at making us sound awesome and probably wrangle in some of our rambling that we have been extremely guilty of today.
Yes, I will say yes to that. We also want to thank John Sumrow for our seriously badass logo. He is an incredibly talented artist, so please follow him on Facebook, check out his official website, and consider joining his Patreon account. We will have links in the show notes.
And finally, we want to thank the darkest of the Hillside Thickets for generously allowing us to use their song Gluttony as our intro and outro music. If you're a fan of Lovecraft's writing or a Call of Cthulhu role playing game, then you should definitely check out the darkest of the Hillside Thickets. We've got links to their Bandcamp and their official band site, links in the show notes below. Thank you very much, guys. We deeply appreciate it.
And we want to thank you, the listeners. So thank you for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Thanks,
Bye.
Seth.
Thank you.